Hi, my name is SadBeard. I am recording in my kitchen during this time. We are hanging out here together like a couple of schmoozy boozy friends. If you ain't boozing, you are cruising for a bruising, or you're snoozing. Or you are oozing and you should go see the doctor because that don't look too good. But also if you go to the doctor, there ain't no doctors there. It's just a cardboard cutout of a doctor with a stethoscope on the cardboard cutout. That is what doctors are now. They are basically like whenever Elmer Fudd would shoot, no, Daffy Duck would shoot like a pistol and the little flag would come out saying bang. That's like when you go to the doctor and you're like, hey doc, I'm not feeling too good. And your doctor just like pulls out his hand and say, here's some medicine. And out comes a little flag that says medicine. So I'm going to the hospital and I'm looking for a doctor, and the doctor who said he would be there wasn't. Hey, I have health insurance, and I also want to go see, maybe I can get an eye exam. I can't do that. What else can I do? I really need some dental work right now. We're not worrying about dental work right now? Alright, what else is going on here? Could I get my car washed? Just trying to get my car washed. I guess we can't do that anymore. What else can we do out here? I really would like to go think of anything that you used to do that was once a thing that was part of society. Like, oh, I need to go figure out where my income tax is. My income tax. I filed my taxes. Where is it? Like, no one's talking. No one's answering. And we're just out here confused, trying to figure shit out. And everything's closed. I voted. Do we get to vote this year? Oh, okay. I thought we were doing an election thing. I didn't know. I thought it was like, now it was 2019 and we were all voting in the primaries. And then we're kind of like, then the general, and then we're going to vote and all the states have to vote. And we're like, okay, so that means we're going to have a new president? Oh, we're not doing new presidents anymore. I guess we quit. We finished the new president's operation because this coronavirus means everything stops. My fridge ain't working. Is there a fridge repairman around? I guess I'll just eat hot food. I guess I'll just keep my food lukewarm. I have a lukewarm machine. I'm going to keep my food in the lukewarm machine while I'm waiting. So that's just a couple of thoughts. You know who's making a shit ton of money right now? Besides the Purell people and the toilet paper people? The band The Knack. They ain't giving up a single gig. All us artists and musicians, no gigs to be had right now. We're actually being bailed out as we speak. We get like $5. Musicians get like $5 when they get bailed out. Because they're like, all we ever got paid in the first place was beer money. So, bail me out. Need a beer. Anyway, there is one band who's getting so many gigs right now, and I think it's just because of the novelty of it all. But you remember that band, The Knack? Yeah, they're still on tour, and they haven't postponed a single date, just because it's so they're so hip right now. Oh, they actually just showed up at my door. They're walking in here right now. Oh, hey, The Knack. You want to play your hit song because it's so popular right now? All right, let them tune up a little bit. All right, guys, take it away. Kick it with the drums. My Corona! Alright, that was the Knack with My Corona. They're getting so much money from that song. There's so many royalties to be had right now in this economy. We've got so many My Corona royalties. You know, I also noticed if you watch TV, Corona is putting some ads on TV, like as if there isn't a coronavirus going on. They're just doing commercials and they're like, remember when you used to go on the beach and just drink a beer, and the word Corona was only about beer. That's remember that? Basically, Corona beer is the Chris Farley show. Like, that's what's going on right now. They're just like, hey, I know there's like a lot of talk about Corona, something about Coronas. A virus is about Corona. But remember when Corona? You remember how Corona is a beer? That's our business. That's our company. We're just trying to. We're still trying to sell beer. I know that like Bud Light's got this like super emotional thing with different comedians and like another guy with his mom like just being sad. But like remember when Corona was just about going to the beach and putting limes in your bottle? Anyway, that was too long of a thing. Hey everybody, this is the Human Variety Hour, and I am glad you are here. The
on the regulars by serving new instant Maxwell House. What's it taste like?
Tastes like shit.
Fresh perk coffee, that's what it tastes like. New Instant Max. Now a better blend of coffee beans, freshly perked for more fresh perk taste. We call it the Perky Instant.
With the success of the recent Apollo space flights, man has been brought another step closer to the moon. Aboard these manned Apollo flights, 3 astronauts, and with them, Tang. Tang, the energy breakfast drink with rich natural flavor and more vitamin C than orange juice. Still, Tang's biggest role isn't in NASA's space program. It's right here on Earth.
Somewhere back at the dawn of history, man discovered roast duck. Man's next discovery, the stuffy stomach. Centuries will pass before he discovers something to unstuff it. When he does, he will call it Alka-Seltzer. Its bubbly alkalizers will neutralize his stuffy stomach. Too late for him, but not too late for us.
Maxim freeze-dried coffee brings you 6 exciting summertime uses for your percolator. We do this now because it's time to enjoy a tall, frosty glass of iced Maxim and use your percolator for other things. For a refreshing summer change, try iced Maxim. You may never perk again.
me away, and don't allow the day here inside where I hide with my loneliness. I don't care what they say, I won't stay in a world without love. Birds sing out of tune, and rain clouds hide the moon. I'm okay, here I'll stay with my loneliness. I don't care what they say, I won't stay in a world without love. So I wait, and in a while I will see my true love smile. She may come, I know not when. When she does, I'll know. So baby, until then, lock me away, and don't allow the day here inside where I hide with my loneliness. I don't care what they say, I won't stay in a world without love. So I wait, and in a while I will see my true love smile. She may come, I know not when. When she does, I'll know. So baby, until then, lock me away,
And don't forget the day we're inside, where I'm high with my loneliness. I don't care what they say, I won't stay in a world without love.
I don't care what they say, I won't
Stay in a world without love. Yeah, that beautiful song was A World Without Love by Peter and Gordon, which looks like Austin Powers and another guy. That's what they look like. Those are just two dudes from the 60s. But that song was actually written by Paul McCartney and given to them, which shows you how much of a giving heart Paul McCartney had, where he's like, hey, I'm just a genius. I got hits. You want one? We don't need it. We just have extras to give out. And it's like, yeah, we're just two boys. We're just two little boys with like very 60s, like cornflake kind of names. And we could use that song to get this one-hit wonder released. And that is what that was, in a very editorialized, opinionated way. But it's a beautiful song, and I like to hear it and sing it. And right now, we do not want to live in a world without love. And we do not want to spend all this time alone, although we are, which is frustrating. It feels alienating. I don't know about you, but like the days run on end, and they each one is lonelier than the last one, and they seem to just trudge on that way. But then Friday rolls around, you're kind of like, I still got that Friday spirit. It's a different day of the week. And I'm able to put a little more feeling into it, like it's the relief day. Friday is the day of relief. You get paid for all the bullshit you did. You enter the weekend and you get 2 days out of the 7 to just do nothing. Just to forget you have a job. Like just to kind of be like, hey, remember all that stuff I spent like 6 months getting paid to learn? I'm going to go unlearn that in 2 days. And then Monday is going to be this whole, oh shit, do I remember what work is? Do I remember how to do this thing anymore? I got to pretend until I'm like, oh, that's right. I got to do shit and remember shit and have projects that I did on Friday that I completely just pulled out of my brain because I was just like, my me mode is kicking in on a Friday. I'm doing the me shit. And when Monday rolls around, I'll do the you shit. and in between is a little bit of a me and a you situation, and we're trying to find the we in it all. Hi, my name is Ryan. I also perform as SadBeard, and right now you're listening to the Human Variety Hour podcast. Coming up on the program, we will have the delightful Lloyd Legacy Sharp. He is a comic and a champion of human rights, and a man who is an unabashed feminist. He has his own self-branded clothing with the slogan, I guess, hashtag respect the ladies. And if you follow him on Instagram, you'll see that this man is a motivating motherfucker. He is out there trying to make sure everybody feels good and that everybody wants to not die and live a positive life, and make sure you stop picking on people who have less than you. It just doesn't make any sense to do that, so don't. That's all you need to say about that. But he has such a life-affirming sense of positivity. If you've ever been in a show or an open mic and he's been in there, he is the loudest laugh in the room in a good way. Because a lot of comedy sucks, and a lot of comedy is good but is exhausting. And even when it's at its most exhausting and the performers on stage tap dancing their heart out, Lloyd will give it to you. He is there to laugh and enjoy life. And at the worst, when he's there, your night's going well. So that's just a little bit of a primer on Lloyd Sharp. After Lloyd, we're going to give a call to the IRS and see what happens there. You stay tuned if you want to know more about that. And then we're also going to speak with the multifaceted, multi-talented Renaissance man by the name of Nick Zaino. He is a songwriter, and he also has a podcast. Name of that podcast, just looking at my notes here. I have notes, so I'm prepared. Just letting you know that I do my homework. I don't know what you're doing. Maybe you're just out there just sitting and just listening and consuming. I'm just stalling for time. I'm not trying to pick on you here. I'm just trying to see what the name of his shit is. It is... Well, it's good. So just to let you know, you're about to know that it's good. But his podcast, I believe, is called The Department of Tangents. He has a website. It's Departments of Tangents. If you look up both of them, you'll find it. But I think that's the name of his band, but also it's the name of his podcast. And he also writes, contributes to the Boston Globe. He's been writing for their comedy section since 2001. So he's been keeping tabs on what makes us laugh since the Twin Towers went down. He's been there for us ever since the first tragedy in America. Was that the first? Won't be the last. There's been a lot of shit, but right now we got our own little dilemma. We'll call it that, and not say the name of the thing, although I spent the whole first part of the show singing a song called It and talking about another brand that's called It. That's gotta be hurting. Gotta be hurting for sales right now. That's all I think. But yeah, right now we're trying to figure this shit out. America has never tried to give a fuck about healthcare and giving it to citizens, and that's why we're in this shit. That's why you can't go to the doctor. That's why when you do go to the doctor and you say, the hospital staff just goes. And then this band makes money. My Corona. So that's the state of the healthcare industry in a nutshell. If you're trying to save time and you need a quick duster on what the American healthcare system is like, I just told you. So go back and listen to it. What else we got here? I can play a song, and then I want to really give way for the great talent that's coming on the program. So here's a pretty cool song that I learned the other day. And if you don't know who wrote it, I did. I didn't write it. It was actually written by the guy who wrote the first song that I played earlier. little rough, but we're doing it. We're powering through. That's what life is. First you suck, then you get better. First things are tough, then they get easier. You go through it, and that's how you get through it. Didn't mean to make that sound effect. Didn't mean to play that, but you'll hear it later. Don't worry about it. All you need to know is that you need to have a good time. That's all you need to do is sit down, shut your ass up, and just enjoy what you're hearing. Because that's what we're doing. We are enjoying our Friday together in company. Here is Lloyd Legacy Sharp.
And the Hootenanny Comedy Festival over there in Worcester next week. He is a very funny young man and just one of the coolest people to hang out with. Let's welcome Lloyd Sharp.
Thanks for being here this evening. Unlike our esteemed host, I am not married. I consider marriage to be a lot like mass genocide. I wouldn't recommend anybody that I care about doing it. I've had a very weird weekend. It started in Worcester, or as I call it, White Dorchester. And it's ending in Somerville. It's a real rags to gentrification story. I don't live in Dorchester anymore, by the way, because I could say White Dorchester, I grew up there, but I'm alive. Which is a dead giveaway that I don't live there. But while living there, I realized that conventional wisdom that tries to tell me that the most difficult thing to try to spend in the world is Bitcoin, it's bullshit. Have you ever tried spending time with your family? Picture it, sitting there, building Lego towers in your Oshkosh. And suddenly somebody taller than you comes in and says, hey, don't be a dick. Unless somebody tells you to suck theirs. So I'm 5, and I said to my grandfather, could you not? Now, the rank of authority in my house is a lot like an amusement park ride. You have to be this tall to tell anybody taller than that what to do. So he took advantage of that, gave me some more life advice 2 years later. Hey, Lloyd, one day you might have a conflict with a schizophrenic person. And it would be very impolite to ask them, who the hell do you think you are? I don't know what the scariest part of that story is. One, I didn't write that. That was just my life in 1993. 2, my cousin, who was also a child, was sitting next to me and said, I think now would be a good time to leave. 3, we did leave into the streets of Dorchester, a safer place to be at that point than around adults. And if you don't see why that's a problem, congratulations on not growing up in Dorchester. Or Roxbury, which is where we went next. Not my decision. They said it was a necessary move. I called it what it was, a lateral move. And so Roxbury, or as I call it now, Dorchester the sequel, is where I learned that I am not a gangster. Let's face it, I sound whiter than anybody in this room. Self-awareness. While being darker than Kurt Cobain's innermost thoughts. Self-awareness. I tried to do a drug deal thing properly in 1997 and failed. First mistake, calling it a drug deal thing. Now, when you give this up to the guy, Lloyd, use a code word. No one knows what you're giving him. Okay, here's your free baseball. I didn't choose the thug life. Thug life didn't choose me. You Tinder people might call that a mutual swipe left. So I stayed inside because only Mario and a barrel tossing ape could save me from the dangers of the ghetto. But not my family. My mother comes in and one day and says, Lloyd, your aunt's got some advice for you. I'm going to give you some advice. Not now, mother. Do you see that? That's called the water temple. You wouldn't know about that. But it took me forever to get to this point, and you're going to ruin it with your family and your phone calls. Step aside. She didn't step aside. Yes, Auntie. Lloyd, I know you're going to high school next year. I want you to remember that sex is just like a bridge game. Weird follow-up, Auntie, but come again. Sex is just like a bridge game. You don't need a partner if you got a good hand. That'll be all, Mother. Take it away. It made sense a year later. Children loved having children in the year 2000. I was a child in the year 2000. I did not want myself. So to keep myself safe, I won't lie. I played a lot of bridge. I'm Lloyd Legacy Sharp. Thank you very much.
Sex is like a bridge game. I don't understand the rules and only know that it's in the paper
Howdy.
once in a while.
Oh, I love it. It rhymes. Yeah, to be honest, that's a exaggerated version of what I believe, but yeah, I feel like they're a lot the same. It seems like a good idea. I understand why people think you want to, but don't do it. I wouldn't recommend it. Exactly. Exactly. It's like one of the biggest issues in America. You know, I once wanted to build a wall, so I bought Minecraft. Problem solved. Exactly. Oh yes. Oh yes. And exactly. And much less damage done to the American-Spanish relations. Yes, much less damage done in Minecraft when you build a wall to the Spanish-American relations. Indeed. Well, full disclosure, I uh I am first of
Lloyd,
all,
my mic was off this whole time. That is incredibly horrible. Almost as bad as the coronavirus. So we've basically just heard reaction audio from Lloyd, and any material that I said just didn't come through.
well, I heard you. That's the funny part. But
People are like, "Why is this guy just look like laughing and quiet? He's laughing and then he's quiet." But because I have such I have such a bulging ego, where I wanted to get in that point where I was like, the Spanish-American relations also need to be thought about. We're talking about the Mexican relations, Spanish-American, but also the Mexican situation is nobody's really talking about how they're dealing with the virus, because let alone American healthcare, no one's thinking about Mexican healthcare. But we do seem to know a lot about Spanish, their situation as far as the virus goes, because those are the white Spanish-speaking people. And notice how that's what shows up on American television sets. And Say it again. Say it again.
Irony.
Irony. It's a bunch of bullshit, if you ask me.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a bunch of heartless motherfuckers walking around, being in charge of showing people what's important. How are you absorbing all of this? When you do you shut your Facebook down? Are you just living under a rock?
No, for me, it's it's easy for me to say this because I'm a political moderate, so I think whether you're going left or you're going right, you're going the wrong way.
Yeah.
I just go by what's right, what's wrong, what's factual, what's not factual. So in this situation, when it comes to the coronavirus, I've tuned out left-wing politics. I've tuned out right-wing politics. I'm only listening to medical and science information. And as far as getting updates from, as far as how it's, what laws are being made or what policies are being instilled, then I'll watch the news. But I'm not listening to Hannity or anybody on CNN or CSNBC, because whether you're for the administration or against the administration, for the record, even as a moderate, I'm against it. No matter which way you lean, you're going to get something that's going to skew something that can't afford to be skewed. So I'm only listening to people who are out there dealing with it as far as getting information. And that's how I felt. So,
in other words, the people who are out there actually touching it, not just talking about it from afar.
Exactly.
That makes me think of that Mr. Rogers quote, "Look for the helpers."
Exactly.
You can trust their intentions. It's if someone's actually getting their hands dirty, if they're actually touching Corona stuff, they're wearing gloves that have Corona dripping off of it, those are the ones you could probably trust, because why would you do that? If you had a choice to do it or not do it, I think the people who are actually helping are the ones who are not going to lie to you about the work they're doing. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, I know people in my friend circle and in my family circle. I have family that work at BMC and Brigham and Women's Hospital. I have friends that are first responders up north. I have people that are seeing this firsthand that I'm not going to name them on camera, obviously, but I know people who are dealing with this that can debunk what you've heard in the media outside of the science experts, both for better and for worse. So I think it's important to take in information from wherever you want to take it in from, but when it comes to how you deal and how you react, only listen to the experts.
Yeah. That's a good way to think about it. I was just watching Bill. I was gonna say Bill Cosby, but no, it's the rich Bill Gates. They're both rich. One of them's a little more thoughtful. The rich Bill Gates. He's the guy who's been pumping money. He's the one who he's talking about how he was he predicted kind of a virus-like thing in this form that could be showing up, and in the lack of preparedness, he was on top of that, because he's the one in Africa with his wife with the Melinda Gates Foundation. He was there with Ebola. He was there with all these pandemics. He's seeing society from a top level view and has the political global influence to actually learn about and affect change. But the thing he said at the end of that interview, which was scary the whole time, but at the end he's what's the message of hope? What's the other side of this? It's well, we ain't gonna do this again. We ain't gonna not have prepared. We're not gonna have a healthcare system that's not fully prepared to have enough, masks and staff on board. It's people aren't gonna let, it's a cry. What is it? The boy who cried wolf kind of thing. So it's this whole thing of people are
It's the epitome of. I mean, it's weird. It's a good analogy, but this is the epitome of what they call never take anything for granted.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because sometimes you have to learn things the hard way in order to know. It sucks that we had to go through this, but if there's any positive, then yeah, we'll know what to do if this ever happens again in 30, 40 years.
Yeah. You said in 30, 40 years?
I hope we don't have to do it.
It's we got a new pandemic this year. Every year it's it's a trend. This pandemic's all about the millennial yellow. This pandemic is, I don't know, it's only affecting people with pointy hats. It's the pointy hat virus. You'd be safe. You're not wearing a pointy hat.
Exactly.
That's that's some real stuff. That's I was actually like, so there's this whole thing where it's like everybody's being impacted in their own kind of way. It's kind of very spooky outside, kind of. Where it's like it's just completely empty streets. The wind's blowing. It feels like the house is haunted because it's like there's a virus and it's the winter time and it's like all this the ghosts of our medical failure.
Felt like it was a protagonist in an MMO.
Yeah, the protagonist in an MMO.
Yeah, like a post-apocalyptic video game where there's like nothing and no one and like that kind of thing.
Yeah, just walking around. For me, it's like I'm walking around with my dog, and you're just these gray streets, and every now and again you see someone shuffle along and then quickly scurry into an alleyway, and you're like, "Did I just see that? I don't know. I better pull out my dynamite stick and just in case I need to toss this thing at a zombie or a ghoul."
On the plus side, much easier to get through rush hour.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you can do all sorts of stuff now. You can go to Disney World. You can get no lines. Well, the only lines are the lines of body bags being pumped out. Like all that's a grim image. But I can save it by saying it's all the body bags being pumped out of the haunted house ride because they're part of the ride. It was all just theatrics. It was not actual. Everyone's safe. No one in Disney World got hurt, except the racial masses who were affected by Walt Disney's vision in the 30s.
Yeah.
You ever I was watching this on YouTube. There's like these old racist cartoons. Like I was watching this old Looney Tunes, and it's just about a ghost. It's a ghost that's haunting a house, and then Porky Pig goes inside because he's just curious what's going on in this house. And then the ghost finally like comes upon him, and he's like, he's spooked out, he's scared or whatever. And then he finally he decides to leave the house. But while he's leaving, he has this car. It's like one of those old timey cars that's like a. And then it sprays a bunch of exhaust on the ghost, and the ghost turns black. Yeah. And then he does a blackface impression, and I was like, "What? Looney Tunes? Everything up until that was fine."
There is a lot, and if you really look for it in those old cards, because a lot of the Looney Tunes that we grew up watching were actually made back in the 30s and 40s. They were the shorts that were played between the movies, kind of like the Three Stooges were. Yeah. And if you look for it, there's Tom and Jerry did it. Sometimes Jerry would put something in something, and Tom's face would blow up, and he would come up, and his face would be black, and he had the red lips. Bugs Bunny with the white glove, and even that infamous skit with Yosemite Sam and Bugs Bunny, where Bugs Bunny's playing a slave, and he's like, "Please don't beat my tired old body, no," and he scurries away, and then Bugs Bunny comes back as a General Corporal character and says, "What is this I hear about two people having slaves?" And it's like, there was a lot of that.
That's real heavy.
Now,
Lloyd, let me just interrupt you for a second. Let me ask you this: have you ever lit a cigar and had it explode in your face?
No.
Were you ever a white guy who was smoking a cigar, and then Bugs Bunny came and lit it, and now you're wearing sunglasses?
And.
All right, go back to where you're. That was not worth the interruption. What were you?
No, I was going to say, but you're right. That was part of the course for those cartoons, and I didn't notice it until I got older. But
I didn't notice because I was just looking up. I was actually just trying to find a sound effect, and I was trying to find I remember when I was younger, there's this ghost, and all those Looney Tunes used to do impressions of old stage and screen actors and stuff. So I was trying to find that one where the ghost is like. Hello, how are you? And I remember in my whatever part of my repressed memories as a child, a ghost doing that or something on Looney Tunes doing that, which was probably some comedian in the 40s or something. But I found that cartoon. That was the first thing that came up. And then I was like, I'm going to watch it and see if I can find it. And then it got all racist at the end. I remember that cartoon, like the whole thing, like the whole song they're singing where he's like, "Jeepers creepers, where'd you get those papers?" I'm like, that's funny because he's a ghost, and a ghost wouldn't sing a song that's like creepy and peepy and. but yeah, like I totally like you block that when you're a child. You don't even know what racism is, so it's like you're watching a cartoon. You're like, how would I know that was racist?
Hey, ha ha ha! And then they're like, yeah, they're laughing at me the whole time. Oh, okay, gotcha.
That's some fucked up shit. Mm-hmm. You know, that's the stuff that gets lost in society, where it's like people don't pay attention to like I was talking to my Asian friend in the whole Corona thing, and there's this popular thing is just to kind of make jokes about how the coronavirus is like an Asian virus, like something about eating bats or something. And it's just like, it's so not funny if you're Asian. And if you're not Asian, you don't know that. But if you talk to someone, it's like, yeah, they're just being polite by not saying, "Could you shut up?" Like, that's like one of those things where it's like, it's incredibly like it seems harmless when it's happening, but like when you're that identity and you're like, yeah, they're just saying the whole thing that's killing the world is an Asian problem, which is
and it's we're desensitized to it because it's the whole, whoa, it's not happening to me, so ha ha. You know, it's like it's funny because you mentioned cartoons, and the reason why we laugh at Wile E. Coyote falling 40 feet to his death, basically, is because it's not happening to us. So
it's a coyote. It's a coyote. Like if it has happened, if it was a human, we'd be like, I don't want to put myself in those shoes.
Because it's not happening to one of us.
Yeah.
For those of us who aren't Asian, we don't understand how much it's hurting them when these things are said. But when we know that it is hurting them,
yeah,
we should at least try to curb how much we indulge in it.
Yeah.
Even if we don't know from experience, we can tell that it's not right. You know?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, even if you just talk to one person and you learn the reality of it, maybe you don't find it funny anymore because it's like you see what the existence of it, like outside of a vacuum that you're telling it in, the real world context of it is discomfort and pain, and I'm sweating in a comedy club because it's like you see the harmlessness of it. But like I've been guilty of like I made a joke and like, you know, you land on a punchline and the punchline's multiple sclerosis, or like you're doing something like that and you're like, what if somebody in the audience had that? Or like, you know, it's just like all of a sudden they went from laughing to feeling their own mortality. I've had that happen where like I've seen comedians, they make jokes and it's like it'll be a quick joke and it's real topical and it'll be like diabetics, and it's like it's a quick punchline to say I had too much sugar, now I got diabetes. Or there's another one where there's a comedian, he had this joke that was like, hey, I want to go, anytime I see someone checking their blood, I want to say, oh, you're just checking to see if you have AIDS? Or no, he was like, I want to check my blood and say, oh, good, I don't have AIDS. And so like, you know, when you're aloof, like, it makes me think of like, kind of like the Jerry Seinfelds of comedy, where it's like, you're just kind of a privileged person walking around aloof, just observing things and putting them together, saying, what if that thing and that thing came together? That'd be hilarious. AIDS and diabetes, put them together. But then like, I'm sitting there going from being like, this is cool, I'm about to go up, and then all of a sudden being like, diabetes equals AIDS equals health equals you're worse, you're less, and it's like, I'm just like, all the feelings of emotions that are not joy. It's like when it you know, when your name comes up in the pile or your number shows up in the list of, oh, that's my thing that doesn't affect them, that just feels shitty. Everyone who's not this will enjoy this because they're also experiencing it from an aloof position. But the people who are not, it's just, I don't know. I think sometimes people are like, you got to check for feedback. Like if you're going to be like performing for an audience, no, you're not doing comedy in a vacuum. And I feel like some people think I'm just going to be what I am, thrust it, force it onto people, and not gauge the levels and see what the crowd dynamics are, not what the populations are. That's me ranting and
no, it's true.
on that shit.
I mean, it's true, and I I do believe that there are some things that it's true that not every joke is going to please everybody, but there are some things that are widely enough known to just maybe not be where you like. There are certain things that it's like, okay, not for that crowd, or not for that room, or not for that one person. I've often said, like, there is George Carlin, one of the most talented but also controversial, comics of all time. I've often said there are some things he said that even I didn't find funny. But I've always made the comparison that if I'm at the TV Garden watching George Carlin and I'm the only person out of 15,000 that isn't laughing, it doesn't mean it's not funny. It's just not for me.
Yeah.
But then there are those other jokes about more serious things that if half of those 15,000 aren't laughing like me, then maybe it's something that is more of a don't do that.
Yeah.
And
there's a line between you're going to ruffle a feather here and there over the course of a 2-hour evening. So, like, there are these kind of forgivable kind of, I guess, microaggressions of some kind. Because it's like, ultimately, it's like he's not walking around giving you poison, but he's making you feel like poison for a second. But like you said, though, like if it's a crowd of 15,000 people and 8,000 are not laughing, then that's a pretty fine line of, now the majority, like, statistically, you're not succeeding. Like, a 50% is a failing grade on a test. But I thought you were going to say that the George Carlin bit you found offensive was the one where he's picking scabs on his head. I'm like, ugh, that's gross. Why are you making, like, that's such a joke I don't want to hear, just because it's like, I feel like some of this, he's just like, I'm just going to try some shit out. You ever picked a scab on your head? Doesn't it feel good? I'm like, no, it doesn't. It's gross. That's gross. Don't talk about that. It's disgusting. Why are people drinking out of water? Why are people drinking water bottles when they leave the house? Why aren't they drinking out of the hose? It's like, because it's not good for you. I think we figured out that, like, hoses and tap water and that source of water could contain lead, amongst other things, and that's maybe could be explaining why he got cancer from all that hose drinking. But maybe not. Maybe it was stress. Maybe it was all the things that they say could lead to, all the things you should take care of your health. But I think getting angry about people drinking water out of water bottles and walking around hydrated was like, it was the angle that, I mean, if that's who you are, that's one thing. If you're just I think in some ways he's also just a cartoon character. It's like, no one's angry about water. No one's angry about people with the name Todd.
Right.
It's for a comic effect, so there is a certain amount of, poetic license taken and all that.
Exactly.
So while we're, I want to make sure we're making the most of our time here. I have a couple questions, or at least a couple things I want to talk about, get into. I think people might be curious. So one thing I want to talk about, you said it was okay to talk about, was getting into a little bit about mental health. The other thing is, I want to talk about kind of a two-faceted thing. Your hashtag Respect the Ladies, which is your brand. You are leading the cause. And also, you have a bit in your act, which when I first heard it, when you did the variety show, I didn't know it was, it felt like, because your rhythm is so spot on, that I laughed at the comic bits, and then it washed over me, and I'm like, that's a sad story. So it was something that kind of sounded like abuse at a young age, and then I put it together in my head that it's like, maybe there's a certain amount of, like, childhood abuse, and then the idea that there's a societal kind of standard where women are predominantly more abused than men statistically, but also men are abused. But that being said, abuse is kind of like is a togetherness. Anybody who is abused is a sense of, like, you're in it together. You're processing it together, and you are, it's that sense of finding inner strength from something that was not your fault. But again, when you look at the Me Too movement and the statistics, it's like rape culture has been such like an accepted practice that just kind of flew by up until like now. But so that's a lot of things to just kind of, I guess, pump out at you. But I guess where did the hashtag begin? And maybe you could talk a little bit about that bit that I'm curious about.
So I'm not sure which bit you're referring to, if it's about my grandfather, my aunt, or...
I think it's the grandfather one where you said, like, it goes into, like, we went into the streets of Dorchester, and then...
that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll get to... I know that. I'll get to that. So, where did Respect the Ladies begin?
Yeah.
So, and I'll try to summarize it best I can so I don't take too much time, but growing up, I grew up obviously in Dorchester, as I always say in my bits, and that's true. I lived in Dorchester for 8 years, Roxbury for 8 years, before I moved here to the Back Bay. And when I was growing up in my neighborhood, it was 90s hip-hop, gangster, tough guy, culture, and like I didn't get involved in it, but I witnessed a lot of it, and I grew up around a time where it was cool to not be gentleman. Like, and yeah, I'm a child growing up in an era where that was just the teenage and young adult standard, and it confused me for a long time. Like, two quick examples. First of all, I have a cousin who, at the time, and if he ever sees this, he'll know who he is, but there was a cousin of mine at the time who made a joke to me when I was 6 or 7. He made the joke. This is like just one of the major strikes. He said, "Lloyd, I got a joke for you. What is all that useless skin around a pussy called?" And I said, "What?" And he said, "A woman." So I'm 6 years old when he first told me this joke, and again, I'm 6, so I don't know really right from wrong as I do now, but I knew that sounded off. Let's put it that way. And very, very schematically, long story short, let's just say that one of the members of my family is a product of another member of my family being too friendly with another member of my family. And that's as far as I'm going to go into that publicly. So,
understood.
I just grew up around people, and then in the streets, I heard, not knowing what it was at the time, I heard catcalling, and I heard all this, and it was just... But those two internal incidents made me go to my mother when I was 9, and I said, why do we treat them like that? We being men, them being women. I couldn't phrase it any other way when I was 9 years old. And so all that experience and not knowing why women were being so dehumanized led up to an incident in 1999. I was on a school bus, and we were on our way home. It was the home ride, like going home. All year, there was this girl on the bus, and I won't say her name on camera, but I'm going to refer to the girl as girls and the boys as boys, because she was not yet a woman, we were not yet men. Mm-hmm. But all year, they were teasing, like, well, one day, we're gonna, and they never acted on it until a week before the end of the school year. There were 8 boys, and myself included, and there was one girl, and they decided to do what they teased doing. And I tried to step in and stop it. I got sucker punched, and I was held down at knife point, face down on the bus, my hands being pulled behind me like this, face into the floor, couldn't move, and if I did move too much, I could have gotten my throat sliced. And that was 2 of them doing that to me, while the rest of them, for the sake of triggering, let's just say, took advantage of the girl for about 45 minutes until eventually, and my head was faced towards, I don't know what was going on. Because people often ask, why didn't the bus stop? Whatever happened? I don't know. I know 45 minutes later, the police showed up, the fire department showed up. Based on what I've heard since, like in the aftermath, I'm assuming that one of them probably threatened the bus to keep driving. I'm assuming. And the bus drivers back then had a way to, like, maybe a button underneath it, like to contact dispatch, emergency. So I don't know why it took 45 minutes. I was too busy being held at knife point. So I don't know why, but it took that, and I had to listen to that happen. And I don't think I need to, I had to listen to what I'm describing happen for 45 minutes. The next day, Respect the Ladies became a thing. Because everything that I explained to you that I had already experienced in my learning years, essentially, leading up to that, I'm like, I can't be like that. I can't be like them. 3 years after that, my mother passed away, which only kind of added to what I already felt. But more or less, between 1999 and 2003, that's how the hashtag began. I mean, even before it was hashtag, I guess you could say. And it's just something I've lived by and built upon and learned more about pretty much until this day.
I don't think a lot of people know that. Like, I don't think people see the hashtag and, they don't understand it and they think it's posturing. But, like, people don't live their lives for a cause to sell magazines, like especially when it's like, the root of your being, when you have shirts printed, it's not a gimmick. So like,
and there's a reason why I haven't made any merchandise deals or endorsed it. I haven't tried to monetize it because I've given them. I had a hoodie made for my little cousin. I've had a shirt made for my friend who was domestically abused, and like But there's a reason why I'm not making money off of it, because for me it's not about the money, it's about the message. And I feel like there's no better way to explain exactly what I'm about than literally having it written all over. And I've been approached, why don't we multi-merchandise this? And it sounds cool, but I also know there are a lot of people who would use something like that to possibly try to take advantage of somebody and lure them into the same situation that inspired all of it in the first place.
Yeah.
And 20 years, like I lived this way long before I ever did comedy, long before I was ever an entertainer. So people who are coming along now may not get it. You're right. It's definitely not a given.
Yeah. I mean, and also when you talk about the nature of comedy and performance art, there is a lot of that shadowy figure kind of, the casting couch kind of thing. And you're saying that, so the idea of like the branding and people trying to basically capitalize on a brand or something that has some kind of cachet. I was going to Emerson, studying journalism when the Boston bombing happened. And that was when I basically looked my future in the face and said, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't want to exploit pain for capital gain. I don't want to be a journalist if it means going out and pointing your microphone in bloody, wounded people's face and saying, how'd that make you feel? And when they have this kind of gross sense of like, yeah, when you get someone crying on camera, that's the money shot. It's like, that's such exploitation, pure and simple. But that was the time when, I basically said, like, I don't think I want to be a journalist when my final, one of my classes was, someone from the Boston Globe, like one of the editors, was like, yeah, we're asking students, and my professor passed this message along saying, like, we're looking for students who may have some footage or some pictures to share from the bombing. It's like, you're trying to get your students to risk their lives or trying to tap into this free market to kind of get some wound footage. When people died, 2 people, a girl and all that went down and people explosion happened. So just the seediness of like some editor being like, we got to get some of that juicy broken bones and guts on camera so we can sell some magazines and make some money off of this. Meanwhile, like my projects were like, I want to go, report on Boston Pride, like just community, that kind of stuff. Like the stuff where it's like, you know how we're trying to just get a little bit ahead as humans, not just pick, instead of standing by and filming or exploiting people's pain, like trying to lift their hand up and help them get back on their foot and treat that pain. So that's one of those things where it's like, you look that in the eye. The other thing that made me think of was, there was a job that I had where literally I worked at a staffing company, and I was trying to get them to be a better, more inclusive company, because it was just all white people and then just one black lady in HR. That was it. And every time, week by week, they would say, here are the new hires, 2 shiny Aryan man and woman, kind of it's such a frat sorority kind of culture. And they, you could drink on Fridays. They had a keg in the office. And I was it was my first opportunity working in marketing and going from retail after grad school. And I was excited and kind of shiny eyed. And then so finally I got the offer to get hired. I got the full-time hire, and I was like, all right, now I can kind of speak up a little bit. And I'm like, I think this company could do Pride. We could benefit from putting a flag out there saying we want to help people of the LGBT community find work. So it was one of those things where it's all you got to do is raise your hand, say, we accept you, and people will show up. And it's only good for business, if not just good for humanity. So finally that happened. But at the same time, there's these other things. I found out, I would go out for drinks for some recruiters, and I found out some of the managers, one manager would not feel comfortable putting a transgender candidate in front of one of their jobs, one of their employers, one of the, their clients, and then another one would. So internally, people are I don't feel too comfortable about showing my well-to-do, portfolio a transgender human. And that's that was just a built-in just block. And also, and not let alone that, there was another thing where we had an HR meeting, and there's an attorney who was actually giving us this, harassment training, because it had never been done before. And one thing he told us is oh yeah, we looked in your system and we found notes from recruiters, and one of the notes said, yeah, this candidate is too ghetto. Just appalling shit. The most, what are you doing? You're a staffing company and you're actively putting blocks on certain sects of society. And then the last straw was, there was an individual who worked there. He was a recruiter, and he left. And I liked him. I didn't know what happened. He was a cool dude. And then I ran into him at a tech event, and he, I'm off taking pictures. I was kind of late getting there. And then I run into him, and I said, oh, why aren't you working here? I didn't notice that. He's working for a new company all of a sudden. And he's like, okay, you can't tell anybody this. Because I guess he had some kind of a legal, when you sign a release, you can't share that information. But he basically said someone within the organization, when he was on a sales trip, sexually assaulted him. There are these people who got these sales records, and they all went to Aruba, and they just drank every day, and their bosses were there. They're just drunk all day, sitting on the beach. And he was cabined with another recruiter who worked in the finance team. Now, this recruiter, I had spoken with some of my friends who were recruiters, are do you think there's anybody here who's LGBT? And they're well, this person is, this girl's a lesbian, and then we think this person might be, or this person's in the closet or something like that. Because I'm just no one's really outspoken about it at this company. So fast forward, that person is the person who's bunked with this guy who had a wife, had children, and while he was drunk, I guess blew him, sexually assaulted him. And then he went to trial with this guy. This guy worked in finance, had some kind of hotshot attorney that was show us the evidence. Well, where's your proof? That kind of, that's the argument is well, prove it then. So basically he couldn't, because he was just, when he's stuck in Aruba, still staying there after having that happen to him, and finally got back home and had this trial, and he couldn't get a rape kit. He just, how could you think of that? And then he leaves the company. His cousin-in-law was his boss. There was just this thing where like he lost in court, and the company's leadership team basically said, we can't fire this individual because we could get sued for defamation. So they let the rapist stay there. And for all I know, he still works there. And so that was my last day is when I found that out. I confronted my boss. I confronted his boss. And I'm like, why did you let that happen? How are you still letting this rapist work here? Why aren't you telling any of the employees? And looking back, I've dealt with attorneys and find out they've had several cases like that. I mean, like they're a repeat offender, I hear. When I kind of do some snooping on LinkedIn, none of the same staff works there. So it's like this out with the old, in with the new, and then all of a sudden this whole cycle starts again. And that's corporate America.
Unfortunately.
So that's my, I guess, part of the, that stuff's out there. And they get away with it. And they have expensive lawyers to make sure of it. And when you're in a vulnerable position and you're leaving your job, I can't afford to pay rent, so I'm going to take this low-ball severance deal in exchange for signing my rights away. That's what you do because you just need to pay rent, and then they win, and they keep on keeping on with that.
And signing over something that I believe in on a moral level for money is definitely nothing that I would do with the Respect the Ladies mantra. Yeah. Because it started based off something. I basically started as a child. Like I was 13 years old when I first decided that that's who I wanted to be. And when you're 13 years old and you make a statement based on, and I didn't know what to call it, so I just said, I remember I wrote an essay on it. I said, the title of the essay was called Respect the Ladies. And it was an essay that I wrote as a therapy assignment when I was in McKinley because people could tell I was traumatized. And they said, dude, don't tell anybody, just write it down, write it to your therapist. And the title of the essay was called Respect the Ladies. Because I didn't know how else to title what I was feeling. And you're not thinking about money and how to sell t-shirts. I didn't even get my first t-shirt until 2004. So like to sign it off, I would gladly make these things in mass production for breast cancer awareness charity, domestic violence charity awareness, like that kind of thing. I would do it if it helped serve the cause, but I can't do it for money. And I also understand, because you mentioned people think it sounds like posturing and things like that. I have a lot of people who have told me that when they first met me or they first heard about me, they thought that it was all a gimmick or a ruse to try to get in bed with a woman. And as a person who sits before you, 6 years away from breaking the 40-year-old virgin's record, and not for lack of offers to me, I can assure anybody that it's not the case. But I understand that not a lot of men talk or speak on women or things that women face in the way that I do. So it's easy, and I don't blame people for not really getting it or believing it or whatever, but even one of my friends in the comedy community, I won't say her name on camera either, but she said when she first met me, she was scared of me. But as time went on, and she saw that this guy's not changing his spots, he's the same giant goofball that he was when I first met him, and he's not switching up.
Yeah. That's
the only reason why people believe it, because they know that this is what you see is what you get.
Yeah.
You know? So it seems like posturing because it's not, I guess it's rare. I'm always told it's rare. Not a lot of men talk like that. Not a lot of men think like that. So I get it, and I don't take offense to people who don't believe it, but I've been this person long before, I was this person long before anybody that I've known in the last 5 years knew I existed.
You're this person.
Long after all of this ends. So sometimes you have to remain consistent for people to believe it, because unless you don't suddenly switch, then they're going to assume you're right. And I get that. I don't take offense to it, but what you see is what you get.
That's true. You are, you are one of a kind, and it does take, I think, it takes one to know one. Yeah, as they say, it's one of those things where it's like, I think a lot of people take, especially performers, out of context, because most of the time you're not meeting and greeting everyone, you're not spending time, and sometimes you're like, I don't necessarily care about this individual, they don't resonate comically with me, but it's like, some people are just like, I made my mind up about you over the course of the 4 minutes you're on stage, and that's who I think you are. And that's not enough to know any human and their backstory and their 30, 40 years on this planet, all the things that shaped them and pushed them into this way and said, I'm going to make this decision for the rest of my life. And here's another thing, I'm going to make a decision for the rest of my life. All of a sudden you show up with all these handbags on a stage, when you were like that before you got on stage, like you show up on stage with that stuff and they're like, what is all this? What are all these pots and pans? And you're like, you got to talk to the person. Like, you got to go have a conversation with a human being removed from the hyper presentationality of comedy or performance art. It's like, there's no, everyone who's a performer is like an illusion of grandeur, But it's like, deep down, it's like, when I think of like Paul McCartney and like all the songs he wrote, it's like, a lot of it's like, yeah, he just feared for his own mortality. He wanted to leave a mark on this earth. So he's writing furiously, trying to make sure his songs are so historically memorable. I'm sure he lived with so much dread and fear and anxiety. And from what I understand, he smokes a lot of weed and some of that stuff. But like, a lot of it's like, I want to make sure I amount to something here. And it's not necessarily, you're trying to just create some joy out of some kind of pain and anxiety, but it's like, but deep down, like, yeah, there is a sense of like, there's the celebrity or the shiny face, the happy face you see on stage, and then there's the person beneath all that saying, how do I create joy for people, and why do I want to create joy?
It's actually a very good transition into your second question.
Yeah.
About the grandfather bit. That's perfect.
Which bit? Your grandfather bit. I will say, we are running low on time, and we need to have a part 2, I think.
Okay. Yeah, that works for me. If you want, that's perfectly fine.
Maybe in a couple of weeks or so, we could have you back on, because I feel like there's a lot to tap into, and from my clock of just when I started kind of recording the video portion, it's been well more than 45 minutes. So it's like, in the interest...
I didn't mean to do that.
No, this means it's an engaging conversation, but I want to just let the listening audience know, if you were compelled by this, there's a lot more to talk about, and there's things we didn't get to. So if you promise to come back in a couple weeks, we can cover a lot more ground. Sweet. And one thing I want to see, can you hear this if I do this? You didn't hear it.
I don't think so, no.
Okay, I played a laugh track sound effect. I wanted to see.
Maybe I heard it, maybe the audience did.
All right, the audience definitely can hear it. You can't hear it, but let's play with this dynamic here. Tell me a joke, tell me a joke of some kind, or some kind of a bit that.
Okay, I got you. So, Black History Month was over a month ago, and I'm kind of glad that it's over, because I look like somebody who celebrates it, but I sound like somebody who can't.
Lloyd Legacy, sharp. Oh, that was fantastic. Everybody, give it up for Lloyd. We're going to have Lloyd back on the show in the very near future. You are a legend of life. And I'm glad to know you, and we will stay in touch, and I hope everything is going good for you.
You as well, good sir. Thank you so much.
Yes, it's my pleasure. I'm glad you were here, and thank you for taking the time to shoot the shit.
Thanks for having me.
Lloyd, we'll talk to you soon. Have a good night, buddy.
Well.
That was Lloyd Legacy. Sharp, everybody. There's a lot more than meets the eye when it comes to humanity. You can't judge a book by its cover, even when that cover kind of looks like an 80s issue of a wrestling magazine. But you got to understand the thing that's on the surface is just a snapshot. That's not the whole thing. With that, we are going to take a commercial break.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
It's hard to fall asleep when some of the things you've eaten insist on staying up past your bedtime. If there are little things still kicking around, your stomach is going to keep you awake. Unless you take Alka-Seltzer. Those soothing alkalizers in Alka-Seltzer can quiet an upset stomach, and Alka-Seltzer's bubbles help bubble your stomach's troubles away. Alka-Seltzer before bedtime. If your stomach doesn't get a good night's rest, neither will you.
More coffee time?
No, thanks, dear.
Try one of these Geno's pizza rolls, Brad. They're great.
Okay. It's a nice party, Mrs. Clark.
I see your husband didn't like your coffee. I beg your pardon? I'm Mrs. Johnson. You should try my coffee. Look, I don't know who you are or how you got into my house, but you take your coffee and leave, okay?
What's that?
Beats me. Do you like the pizza rolls?
Wild. They taste like cheeseburgers.
And these taste like chili burgers, and then over here I have ham and cheese.
You seem to have everything, Mrs. Clark. Ever think you had bad breath, too?
No, but you do. Nice thing about these pizza rolls, you just take them out of the freezer and pop them into the oven.
Please, Clark, start wearing cleaner blouses.
I'll give you 30 seconds to take your blouse and get out of my house. Another Geno's pizza roll.
This is a wild party.
In this neighborhood, we get all the nuts.
Yeah. Totina Pizza Rolls are sponsoring this show. And what's that guy doing talking about her breath like that? That's not very appropriate at all. In keeping true with the theme of you can't judge a book by its cover, you can't look at life through a series of photographs, because when you do, you start to feel pain, because a photograph is only a memory, is only a moment of captured time. But the best thing you can do is live life and love each other. That is the best use of time. And you can also take a listen to the song that is called Photograph. But all I've got is expecting me to live without you. That's not something I'm looking forward to. I can't get used to living here while my heart is broke. My tears are cried for you. Want you here to heaven hold as years go by. We grow old and gray. That was Photograph, written by George Harrison, performed a little sloppily by Ringo Starr in Thereafter myself. But I like to think that's a George Harrison song, and they're both capturing the idea that, man, it sucks when people go, and you look at that fact. But we're here to create the joy that we have here, and part of doing that is making sure we have enough music and joy for everybody. Better must come.
I've been trying a long, long time, still I can't make it. Everything I try to do seems to go wrong. It seems I have done something wrong. Why they trying to keep me down? Oh, God bless, no one curse. Thank God I'm not the worst. Better must come one day. Better must come. They can't conquer me. Better must come, yeah. I've been trying a long, long time, but I can't make it. No one to give me an helping hand. They only trying to keep me down. Oh, God bless, no one curse. Thank God I'm not the worst. Oh, my people can't see. They try to take advantage of me. Better must come. Better must come, yeah. Better must come one day. Better must come. Yeah, 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 yeah. I've been trying a long, long time, still I can't make it. Everything I try to do seems to go wrong. It seems I have done something wrong. Why they trying to keep me down? Oh, God bless, no one curse. Thank God I'm not the worst. Better must come one day. Better must come. They can't conquer me. Better must come one day. Better must come. Oh, better must come one day. Better must come. I better must come. Better must come. Better must come.
Better Must Come. That was Delroy Wilson from the year 1971 with Better Must Come. Not yet. We'll get there, though. We have another musician coming up on the program, individual by the name of Nick Zaino. Let's take a listen to a song from Nick called Who Wants to Die Happy.
I'm not as bad as I was, not as good as I could be. At least that's what I keep telling me, just to try to stay sane. If I want to die happy, but who wants to die happy? It's not as good as it sounds. Don't forget that you're dead. All my old bad habits gotta put 'em aside. Someone threw a switch, and I threw a fit. Now I gotta be a new man, just to keep the old one from dying. Not as bad as I was, not as good as I could be. At least that's what I keep telling me. If I wanna stay sane, if I wanna die happy. But who wants to die happy? It's not as good as it sounds. Don't forget that you're dead. Which do I like better? Hungry and alive, or dead and satisfied? I've been wasting time, thinking about the time that I've wasted. If I can't kill me, maybe no one else can too. I keep it on my mind, all the things that I've tasted, all the luck that I've misread. Whatever lies up ahead, the best of it was time with you. Not as bad as I was, not as good as I could be. At least that's what I keep telling me, just to try and stay sane. If I want to die happy, but who wants to die happy? It's not as good as it sounds. Don't forget that you're dead.
Nick.
Hello, how are you?
Good. We just heard you.
Great. Yep, I was listening in.
Singing about not being dead.
Yeah, that was the last track that wound up on that album that I wrote.
That is the song.
Write something upbeat.
That is the song we are all singing right now.
Yeah, it's got a kind of dark humor to it. Yeah, that was me trying to write something hopeful, which always sort of comes out a little weird. I always wind up a little bit off the target where I started when I'm writing a song. I don't know if you find that as well.
Yeah, I mean, you have like the best intentions going in. You're like, I want to write a happy song, and then all of a sudden it comes out, and you're like, ooh, there's a lot of tragedy in that. Maybe it's the process where you find the joy.
Maybe. Well, I do think some of those songs do wind up being happy songs too. I mean, I'm a fan of a lot of sort of classic country and country punk, where sort of the happy message is that I'm not dead. You didn't beat me. It's going to take more than that if you really want to take me out.
It's going to take a lot more than that to take a powerhouse like you out of this world. You are hustling on all cylinders. You're a songwriter, you're a podcaster, and I heard that you are also a contributor for the Boston Globe's comedy section. Is that right?
Yeah, I've been covering comedy for the Boston Globe since 2001, and before that for the Boston Phoenix, and before that for the Buffalo News. So I've been covering comedy for a fairly long time now, since somewhere around 1997 or 98.
And all those things some of those things are dead. So, like as far as the Phoenix.
The Phoenix is dead.
And ironically, that Phoenix has not, well, it has risen out of its ashes, and now it's Vanyaland online, right?
Well, that's not exactly, it's not the same people. It was the music editor from the Phoenix started his own venture from there. So that's not officially like an outgrowth of the Phoenix itself, but it's people from from the Phoenix made their own venture.
So it's like a spin-off. So it's kind of like Frasier, and the Phoenix was Cheers.
Yeah. I do miss the Phoenix. I got to cover an awful lot there, and there's some really great stories, and I have some great memories of covering some of that stuff, like going out to interview Levon Helm from the band out at his barn at Woodstock.
Oh, wow.
Getting to sit behind him and watch him play drums. I have to remember, I'm here to write about this. I can't just sit here and be mesmerized watching the guy roll around the kit. I've got to write some things down.
That's tough when it comes to music journal. Like, I've written for some music blogs, and when you're as a music journalist, it's hard to, because you're supposed to be an active listener, you're supposed to document it, but then at some point you're like, if it's your favorite band or your favorite artist, and also maybe there's a drink included, you're like, I'm kind of just watching this concert, and we'll see what I write at the end of this. Like, we'll see what I remember.
You've got to be kind of an objective fan in a way, which is a hard balance. I mean, you've got to be truthful about what's happening in front of you, but if you're not also still a fan, then what you write is going to be kind of dead and not necessarily worth reading.
That like that passion shines through. Like, people can tell, like, you know, if you're not enjoying it, people are going to enjoy it. Like, it's the same of writing music. I mean, do you find that, like, you're like, yeah, I could crank out a song, but if I don't enjoy the process of singing it or creating it or doing it, then I know I don't think an audience would. And, you know, I have I don't know if you felt this, but like the naivete of saying, oh, well, I technically wrote a song. I wrote the verse. I wrote a chorus. They're different chord progressions. Somebody out there must like it. Well, it's like, well, if it didn't make you dance or kind of make your soul vibrate, I think that's part of it, is like, it has to vibrate within, and then it resonates without.
Yeah, I mean, there's also the idea that whenever you finish a song, you know, probably 95% of the time, you think it's the best thing you've ever written until you listen back to it, your recording of it the next day, and you're like, oh, maybe not. Or you listen back to it and say, oh, I know why I like that song, because that's a Beatles song.
And you ripped it off.
Lyrics. Crap, and now I can't play this because I completely stole it subconsciously.
That's painful. Like, don't you ever feel that you're like, because when you have so much, like, when you have integrity, and you're like, part of creating art is not stealing and being honest to yourself about, this is a new thing I'm making. But then when you're like, but this melody came together awfully quickly, and then you kind of find a way to connect it to something, and you're like, I can't enjoy it because I feel like it wasn't mine. But then I think there's also a part of your brain that could probably do it to literally anything you write. Like, you could find a way to say, oh, that was some reggae song I heard in the 70s, like some old song I heard younger or something. But like, I feel like
how far do you go with it?
How far can you go? And it's like, if you're not ripping off piece by piece, I mean, ultimately everything is a little bit of like I'm taking pieces of this, I'm taking part of that, and I'm channeling all of these ingredients through myself. So it's like,
I'm paraphrasing. There's that old chestnut about how, like, amateurs borrow and professionals steal. What's the actual? I can't remember the actual line, but it's there's some truth to that. I mean, you're not reinventing the wheel writing a rock song in 4/4 or a folk song, so you could probably find an analog somewhere out there to it, but I don't know. It's how far do you go with it? If you listen back and see, okay, I've got the same melody over the same chords, and sometimes it's the same. Like, Adele got in trouble for, like, the Rolling in the Deep being
was it Tom Petty?
Shelter.
Oh, okay.
And I think I would listen back to that and thinking, all right, so there's a similar melody, but I think it's what the piano's doing in the background that makes it sound like the Rolling Stones' "Gimme Shelter." And if she were singing that just over the bass line, if you took that track out and put a different, guitar under it, it might not have come to mind so readily to people to say, oh, I think that she ripped that off. And I don't know that that she had it consciously in mind at all.
I think a lot of times not. I think it's the attorneys more than the artists are coming after. Like, there's all these famous. You can go on YouTube and look all these things up, but like all these famous things of like, not the hey, Mick Jagger doesn't care. He's having fun. He's rich. He's living his life. But the attorney of the Rolling Stones comes after the guy. What's that song? A Bittersweet Symphony.
Yeah.
Because he sampled just a little percussion. It wasn't even the melody. It wasn't any of the string arrangements.
Yeah.
Just the tong tong. Just these like percussive little voicings that just add texture. That's like saying, "Oh, I'm going to sue you because you borrowed my type of fabric and put it underneath your stage or something like that."
Well, that could have been avoided too, because I think they sampled directly from the track. I think that's what wound up being the linchpin for the Stones attorney. So if they just said, we sampled this.
Oh, as opposed to producing it anew, like just taking you got a bell, so I'm going to go get a bell and just record a new version of that.
I could be wrong about that, but I think that's what it was. I think that they sampled the bell right from the original recording, and I think that's what kind of killed them on that. I could be wrong. I gotta Google this afterwards. I'm sorry.
We have to hire a fact checker, a music journalist fact checker now, to make sure these are all accurate. The other thing that made me think of is like basically I feel like all those 70s old guard rock and roll labels, they're the most lawyered up of them all. And like similarly, like you have someone like Adele, who's a new popular act, and then who else happened to Sam Smith? He got sued by Tom Petty's thing because like the progression was a 3-chord progression that could have been
the same melody as well. It was of the hook of one of his biggest songs. But I think in that case, the two of them kind of got together and figured it out. I mean, I think it was a much bigger deal in the press than it was for the two of them.
Like they're like, we can split the whatever and not make they compromise somewhat.
Yeah, they came to some sort of agreement, and I don't think there was ever any real contention between. I don't think there was any animosity, let's say that, between those two camps. I think Petty just kind of said, "Hey, that's the same progression and the same melody," and they looked at it and went, "Oh, well, right, okay, well then." I think they came to some sort of agreement over that. I mean, it's the same. It happens, it happened to George Harrison over My Sweet Lord.
Yeah.
Years ago. And he wrote songs about it. If you listen to this song, it's basically a parody of his court experience.
I've seen that, and also the irony is like he ripped off a girl group who's produced by Phil Spector for a song that was put on an album that was also produced by Phil Spector. So it's almost like
that was the My Sweet Lord thing, because it is when you listen back to it. When you listen to it at first, I don't know in context. If you listen to it back when it was originally released, maybe you'd immediately have gone, "Oh, that's a girl group song that's sort of repurposed into a kind of folky setting." But I'm not sure if you listen to it now, you would necessarily get that immediately from it.
Yeah.
Did you necessarily listen to it and go, "Oh, well, that's definitely that"?
Well,
there's the whole John Fogerty thing too, where his old label tried to sue him for writing songs that sounded too much like himself. That was a weird time.
Wait, because he didn't have ownership over Creedence Clearwater, and because he had to become a solo act to make a whole new possession of his own catalog, kind of thing. Is that what?
Some of his solo stuff. The guy who owned the CCR catalog was kind of litigious, and when he put out Centerfield and Old Man Down the Road, they went after him saying your solo songs sound too much like Creedence songs, and they kind of got laughed out of court because Fogerty's lawyers, I guess, because the prosecuting attorneys played Old Man Down the Road over, I forget which, Run Through the Jungle. I think that was the song that they thought it sounded too much like. But then Fogerty's attorneys played it over like the Star Spangled Banner and a bunch of other things, and saying, why isn't Francis Scott Key also suing us? And eventually just turned the thing into a mockery.
Yeah.
And Fogerty gets the laugh by writing a song about the guy who sued him. But he had to change the name. He couldn't use the actual name of the guy. His bands can't dance. That's the song.
That's just a case of the shoe eating the foot or something. Something like that, where it's like, I don't know, where it's like you're trying to, that's like I don't know, somebody wrote a song with a triangle and all of a sudden they're going after the Porky Pig cartoon where they ring a triangle to call everybody for breakfast. It's just one of those
yeah, it can get ridiculous, but I also understand as somebody who writes, and that's what I feel is the thing I do best. I don't want anybody necessarily ripping off what I would do either. Not that anybody would, because you don't tend to rip off the people who have as low a sales on Bandcamp as I do.
Yeah.
But as a writer, I can understand. Not everything is permissible, but where's the line for what you own versus what's just taking something, because that's the whole evolution of music.
Yeah.
Taking whatever the last person did and trying to figure out how you can do that and maybe put your own stamp on it.
There's almost like a little bit of a scavenger quality to it. Like, all right, like Tom Petty's no longer with us, so I'm going to take a little bit of Tom Petty and I'm going to try to jump on his train a little bit and ride myself a little higher. Like, I think that's maybe some of the fear, which is like legacy protection, where it's someone's like yourself and myself. It's like we're creating stuff because it's like ultimately you want to make something that kind of sticks around, because if it's recorded, if it's documented, it's here, it gets to live in a space of some sort.
Yeah.
So you're afraid someone's going to come along and say, I wrote that. All of a sudden your bones just dissolved and your identity never was. And somebody came along and said, I am the talented one that thought of those ideas, as opposed to I picked up where this person left off. And a lot of people, I feel like, especially when they're sampling maybe, or they're covering, or they don't show credit where it's due, maybe in some ways. I mean, there's some ways where it's like, I don't know, if someone has an ostensible legacy or a mark, like everybody, there's no avoiding, like the Beatles are famous in that their songs are all available. So if you play a thing that sounds like the Beatles, everybody can tell. I feel like there's a certain public domainness to when someone actually achieves do right in their time, but then take someone like Stephen Foster, the guy who wrote all the folk standards, and like he died starving, but he has the songs like Camptown Racers, Oh Susanna. Those are the songs that children learn in music class to this day, but he didn't get the due. He didn't get his due in his time. It's like that's the thing I feel like it's worth protecting, is if you don't get your due in your time, at least make sure people aren't exploiting people who didn't get their due in their time, and maybe even like hoist people up versus I'm gonna grave rob. And I think, I don't know, what are your thoughts on that? Like, as far as like
that happened a lot. Like you can pick on Led Zeppelin a lot for that. And when Led Zeppelin was recording those first few albums and taking all of these blues songs and not giving credit for them, I think they've gone back and had to give credit for different things. There was this idea of the folk tradition of, you take something and you make it your own. And I think maybe that was in their head, like, well, we're just doing what all the folkies in Greenwich Village are doing, but with the blues. It's like, yeah, but, you've got to, you took words and melodies and ideas and made something great with it, but then you didn't give credit. But I think they did appreciate those guys, and they did help some of those people later on. But you just can't take it wholesale and say this is mine now because I made it louder and I changed the riffs around a little bit. I have a song of my own called Bruises. It was off the first album that I thought I think it's one of my best songs, but I thought it was a rip-off of a band called Richmond Fontaine, a band out in Oregon that I love dearly, until I met the main songwriter, Willie Vlautin, who's also a fantastic novelist, incredibly talented, unfairly talented, almost individual. And I saw him at a book reading, and I told him, man, I'm also a songwriter, and I think I may, I think my best song might be a ripoff of yours. Would you mind if I sent you the song? And I felt very happy and relieved, and maybe he was just being nice when he actually listened to the song and got back to me and said, no, man, it's a great song, God bless. Go. Inside he might have been thinking, I'm just going to be the bigger man and not tell him, yeah, this is my thing.
Will you play that song for us? Is that too much to call upon spontaneously?
I can,
or even like a little sample of it.
I can. It's a harder song to play, because I have trouble with my hands sometimes.
Let me ask you, what was the name of that song that you were afraid it sounded like?
Well, it just sounded like their sound. It sounded like a lot like them. But then, as I'm thinking of it, that first, like the. That's the opening riff for it, and that sounds a lot like them. And Willie Vlautin tends to tell he tells stories over the songs for Richmond Fontaine quite frequently. It's like these little Raymond Carver stories, and there's a lot of that in that song. But there's some Uncle Tupelo in there too. But it's a song about domestic abuse. Do you want me to give it a shot?
Well, I thought something that'd be fun to do is for the listening audience, compare and contrast. I'll play a little hint of them, and it'll just be a fun context game. So what was the name of that song that you were talking about? Or what's a song, just to give a sense of scenario?
Anything off of Lost Son, because that's the one I was really, really digging into. So maybe Cascades might be... that might be one that I was definitely listening to a lot of that and reading a lot of actual Raymond Carver, and looking at stuff by an artist called it's Greg Greenway, I think it was. So all of this stuff sort of, I've never written another song quite like it. I've never written another song that's a story song as much as that one is, that has definite characters and settings. Like I could write a short story or a novel based on this song. I've thought about it, but never quite launched into it.
Yeah, well, let's hear what it sounds like. I played a little bit of the track under your talking, and I think it'd just be fun to just kind of hear your influences shine through you.
Well, the other one is Whiskey, Painkillers, and Speed. That's another one that it's a little bit like, and I was very happy when I got to talk to Vlautin about it, saying, there's a lot of stuff that I write about that isn't necessarily my personal experience. I feel sort of the emotion of it, but it's not. But I didn't live the experiences of it. And I brought up that song. He's like, "Oh man, don't worry about it. I wrote that song. I've never been, into whiskey, painkillers, and speed. But I bought a used car and there was a Blue Oyster Cult T-shirt in the back seat with a bottle of whiskey, and that's how that that one came out. That's not my life either, but." But all right, I'll play the song.
Awesome.
When the iron gate groaned shut, he knew he wouldn't see his brother anymore. His mother had refused to come. Last time he'd seen her, she'd been sitting at the kitchen table, She pulled at the corner of her house dress and stirred her coffee and cracked a porcelain cup. She said to go on without her. She said she'd had some thinking to do. He went off to meet his brother alone. It was only a few bruises, they would have gone away. Now everything's been broken in the ground where his father had been laid. You want me to keep doing the whole song?
I mean, that was fun. That was just I thought it'd be a fun idea in the moment, just to kind of say, all right, we were talking about people being influenced and, you know, channeling their artists. So I thought it'd be fun to do, like, I'm going to play a little bit of who you were talking about, your rectification, you know, you're reconciling with the artist directly, saying, no, you didn't steal this. You thought, I mean, you channeled us if you're influenced by us. And then, you know, I played a little bit of their sound, and your sound is not, it's your sound, but it's you learned from them. So that was just fun to do that, but I'm just making sure my levels aren't too hard.
Sure.
Yeah, so, I mean, we did talk about, you know, there's a couple songs maybe you'd like to share with us.
Yeah, I've got a couple songs off the, I released an album in November that I could play for you.
What's the name of that album, and where can people find it?
It's called Habitual Salvation, and it's on Bandcamp. You can download it also on iTunes or Apple Music, depending on at what time period you identify with that particular service, iTunes or Apple. And it's on Amazon. It's on CD Baby, although artists check your CD Baby because apparently they retired their online store.
Well, I'm just thinking out loud here. When your whole company is called CD Baby, yeah. And when's the last time you saw a CD, let alone touched one, let alone played one?
Well, you know, it's weird. I got download cards for the first full-length album and the CDs, and the download cards never sold. I wound up giving those away sort of as promo to people I wanted to hear it. That was sort of cheap. I didn't have to give away the CDs. Most people bought the CDs. I'm not sure where we are now.
Do people buy them at your shows?
Yeah, people would mostly buy them at the shows. Yeah.
So I think that's what it is. People buy them because it's like a souvenir of the experience. But when it comes to like online sales, or if you're talking here and you're trying to get people to look at your music, I think people are more inclined to say, I'll go on Spotify. So it's like you have to go where people are, especially when you're on like an online situation. But I think there's an interesting thing where it's like CDs have their place as merch as a show. Mm-hmm. But I mean, that's like, I feel like I like the idea of touching something and like it's a keepsake of a memory. But I'm wondering about how expensive it is to produce a CD on your end and what the return on investment is.
Yeah, it's marginal, and I've got an EP coming out later this year, and I'm debating whether to do physical media at all, especially in light of everything that's going on with the pandemic. No one's going to want something you touched.
Yeah, like, oh, you touched this?
Which is the opposite of fandom before. Oh, he touched that. You know.
Yeah, I want a piece of Michael Jackson's hair. And it's like, now it's like...
but only mainly for evidence.
Exactly, yeah. We need to prove that this glove was on the scene of the crime. Not anything more than that. It used to be like something you put in a museum. But but the idea, I wanted to release music physically, but then I was like, I'm not going to spend money out of my own pocket for CDs. I'm going to do it. I'm going to make sure I can afford to put it on vinyl. If I'm going to do anything.
Yeah, well, because you get vinyl in a download card, and then people get the thing they can take home, and the thing that
they do.
A much smaller percentage of people will actually listen to. Plus, they get the actual music on MP3 or WAV or whatever format they want.
Yeah, I was seeing especially when it was like the turn of the decade, where like, you know, the Radiohead and the Strokes, they did this thing where like, which way are we going? I know, I'm going to release the vinyl with the CD, with the digital download card, with a pack of stickers, with a t-shirt. And they're like, let's throw everything in the same thing and see which one sticks. Because it's like
a spool for your Victrola, and we got you covered no matter when you grew up liking music.
And we have sheet music that you can play on your piano. Actually, Beck did that.
Player piano.
Do you remember when Beck did that?
He did all. Yeah, he released a bunch of stuff that was just sheet music. Was that what
he
what
didn't
the
even?
video was?
There wasn't even. I think if he did anything, he recorded or performed it after. But he literally conceived and wrote it just for sheet music and released the sheet music, which is such like a cool. I don't want to say the word hipster, but it's like it's such the move that's like that's a fun idea to do. That's like some fun Jack White type of just kind of how do we find the space between the space when it comes to marketing art?
Right, and to somebody who's established enough to do that, an up-and-coming band could never afford to just release sheet music because no one would care.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They released their new sheet music. Great. Well, we'll wait till they actually make some sounds, and then
we'll come back.
Yeah.
We'll take a look if we remember. Well, can you play? You had two songs.
Yep. This one is called "Better When You're Strange." It's the more upbeat of the two that I'll play. I like you better when you're strange. Your eyes flash and the colors change. It feels like when you're with me, you're someone no one else will see. I like you better when you're strange. You give me something I can taste. But when you hang around with those boys, your charms go to waste. I don't just want you for the things they do. Hell, I want you for those things too. I just want to help you to fit into a shape that feels like you. You like Picasso and old band bars. I like my comic books and cheap guitars. I'm not saying that we're written the stars, but we fit in all my favorite parts. I like you better when you're strange, when you're busting down the gates, when you're dancing on the front lawn in your suspenders and a cape. Don't keep me waiting. Come out and play. I like you better when you're strange, but when you're something short of sane. Whatever's twirling in your brain, it makes me want to know your name. I don't just want you for the things they do, unless you want me for those things too. And I can love every part of you and never have to stop and think it through. You like turtle wax and shaving scars. I like my jelly from a mason jar. There's nothing about you that's too bizarre to ever keep us apart. I like you better when you're strange. Your eyes flash and the colors change. Feels like when you're with me, you're someone no one else to see. How'd that come out?
That came out really good. Yeah, it sounded really awesome.
Oh, great.
Yeah, like we had a little bit of a technical glitch testing in here at the beginning, but when we actually dialed you into the real deal, your quality is actually improved. So maybe the storm that was happening outside subsided just in time for your performance, which is very convenient.
I have mixed feelings. The storm sounds so nice on my windows, and it's just so nice to sort of hear it. But I think, well, not everybody can be indoors right now. Maybe I just need to learn to enjoy the rain when it comes. But I don't know. It gets to me.
But you feel like the guilt of, oh, we have shelter and we have the ability, depending on what you do, to work from home during a coronavirus. Some people are like, still got to go work at the grocery store, still got to be homeless, and they aren't getting the funding and the relief, let alone anybody is. But they're the first first line of vulnerability.
Yeah, I mean, should I just enjoy the rain because it makes me, feel nice to sit in here and it's a relaxing sound? But it's, I don't know. I tend to ruin my enjoyment frequently of things by, I have like the Debbie Downer in the back of my head.
There's two.
Like, oh, look at this beautiful new snow in this morning. Yeah, somebody's freezing out there. Can't I just? Can you give me a minute to just enjoy this out there? And
there's two sides to every coin.
Yeah. And
with every Christmas comes someone who got murdered on Christmas. And that's a painful memory.
Every Christmas. There's someone who's been murdered.
That was the day my pa got murdered.
That's why I keep a gravestone ornament on my tree every year to make sure that I never enjoy a second of the holiday.
Yeah. Actually, the bell that they have as an ornament is really one of those things that's like, it signifies that my ancestor was one of those buried alive guys that had one of those bells. There's a dead ringer bell.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, where they pull it, there's a string that goes down into the coffin. So if they buried you by mistake, which apparently happened often enough,
seemed to happen a lot,
to require a practice against it, because you had to not only rig that contraption so that they could ring the bell from the coffin, you had to hire somebody to listen for the bell too.
Yeah, you had to install a service. You had to have like an ADP come out and install it in the coffin. But then also, like, why aren't they putting that time and effort in making sure the person's dead? They're kind of like, is this person dead? Seems like it. Do you want to check? I don't want to check. I want to just trust my instincts on this.
Give him a day. See if he's actually dead, because we've been wrong before. So maybe.
We around here like to sleep 8 hours. This guy's been sleeping 8 hours 15 minutes. I think he's dead. Let's call it at 8:15. Dead zone.
I do wish we would tell horror stories around Christmas like they do in the UK and some other places around. It was a tradition we've lost, and I'm a big horror fan, and I think there's so much that you could do with that.
Where do they do that in Germany? Where they told you about the Santa Claus that actually took children's fingers instead
Krampus,
of...
Yeah, Christmas Carol is a ghost story. They would tell ghost stories in England, and that's a prime example of one that I don't think that we think of here as a ghost story. We tend to think of the end of that story and how Scrooge has his epiphany. But, he's also terrified for an hour before that by spirits.
Well, it's heartwarming. It's heartwarming because he's a rich guy. So you're I'm so happy that this rich guy is being tormented by these ghosts. And it's like about time a rich guy got tormented. It's like it's comfort food on the holidays.
It's not only a rich guy, it's a rich guy who doesn't treat anybody.
He's a capitalist. He's a capitalist. He's a miserly capitalist.
Yeah, who his employees don't have enough to live on, and he makes them work overtime so he can get his extra pennies. So we focus on the transformation instead of the guts of the story on that one. But that is a horror story through most of it.
I will say it's a very joyful horror story if you look at it.
Well, they can be
in the lens of capitalism.
There is a parallel to that. There might be the reason why I like the country songs and the country punk songs that say, I'm still here. That's also what you get from a lot of horror. You've sent your worst monster after me, and I'm alive at the end of it. A lot of horror to me is a life-affirming a sort of thing of survival against the worst that somebody can throw at you. You know, and sometimes that worst is a guy with razor blades for fingers.
Yeah. Some of those 80s horror movies are actually like, I don't know, they feel very nourishing. Like it's because when it's so campy, you're like, man, this is the most joyful version of like Frankenstein, or like a ghost that can't eat food. Oh yeah. Have you ever seen the Monster Squad?
Yes, Wolfman's got nards.
That movie, I think it's a classic. It's a timeless treasure.
Even I went back a few years ago and watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre again, thinking, oh, we've seen so many horror movies now that are so transgressive. This is going to seem quaint.
It isn't.
So I fired that up around 2 a.m. Nope, not quaint at all. Terrifying. All this stuff happens for no reason until you get to the second one, and then the reason becomes more clear. But at the end, you know, sorry, spoilers for those who haven't seen the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
You know, when the final girl, as they call her, the woman gets on the truck and is speeding away from Leatherface, she's laughing because she's alive. She's laughing and pointing at the frustrated monster who can't run after her on the truck. And that, maybe I'm a little warped, but that seemed like a happy ending to me.
Hey, it's all comes from what your experience is in this life.
I hope I'm not. I'm probably extending the length of the podcast more than you wanted to, telling stories about Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
No, it's one of those things where this is one of those endless conversations that deserves you to come back again, because we are pressing against the time limit. But if you want to play one song, and we should definitely do this again.
Yeah, anytime. And this one is the other one was more uplifting, but this one's more upbeat. I have the same foot tambourine you have, but I don't think it shows up on this. I would normally play the foot tambourine and the foot shakers along with this, but I don't think you can hear it on this setup.
If it happens, might come through, but I'm hearing the guitar and I'm hearing your voice fine.
All right, this is called Pour Me a River. Come along if just for the ride, and I'll stay with you all night. Leave these gods and goddesses and the worn-out shores. Got nothing but ourselves to live for. And if we drown, so be it. I'm not afraid of what comes next. So pour me a river. I'll drink it all and never miss a drop of you. Pour me a river. I'll swim it all till I've got the last of you. We walk among the righteous proclaimers, the sin namers and the autocrats. They come with their hooks, and I brush them off our backs. I want you to know, I need you to trust that we are ocean enough to dissolve the dust. So pour me a river, I'll drink it all and never miss a drop of you. Pour me a river, I'll swim it all till I've got the last of you. Come me convince you it'll be alright. Man makes a tablet of stone, and we make our love our own. And if we die, so be it. I'm not afraid of what comes next. So pour me a river, I'll drink it all, and never miss a drop of you. Pour me a river, I'll swim it all, till I've got the last of you. Pour me a river, I'll drink it all, never miss a drop of you. Pour me a river, I'll swim it all, till I've got the last of you.
Hell yeah, that is Nick Zaino. I appreciate you dropping by.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we'll do this again, and I hope you have a great night. And everybody go find Nick. Where can they find you out on social media?
You can find me at you can find the blog at departmentoftangents.com. You can find me on Bandcamp, maybe CD Baby now, Facebook. I think I'm just Nzano, at Nzano on Twitter, and all the usual social media places.
Excellent. Well, you take care and have a great night.
You too. Thanks.
All right, thanks. Everybody, that was Nick Zaino with some stunning originals. We are coming just about to the end of our show here. We have tested your patience, and we have completely put on a show that is more than 2 hours. I admit it. There are some segments we wanted to get to. But in the essence of everyone's attention span, we're going to do a couple things here, and then we're going to call it a night. But what I want to do is I want to talk to the IRS. I want to know what's going on. Where's my money? Where is my damn money?
Welcome to the Internal Revenue Service. Live telephone assistance is not available at this time. Normal operations will resume as soon as...
Let me tell you how it Give me my money. And why do I pay more taxes than Amazon does? Answer me. All right. That was just some ventilated grievance at the IRS. Stop taking my money. Give me some health care and less war with it. Why does all of Congress get health care with our tax money and we don't? Valid questions to be asked. Why does Amazon pay less taxes than I do, than you do, than anybody does? Doesn't make any sense. Before we get too angry, that was not the goal for tonight. Tonight was the goal. We want to create joy on a Friday after a long week, after a long series of weeks that we've all experienced together. And on that note, I'm going to play a song by the name of Fare Thee Well. Fare thee well, everybody. I thank you for staying present. I thank you for listening. I hope you have yourself a sweet night, a sweet evening, a sweet weekend, and be nice to each other.
The